Students, welcome to this EDUSAT program. In the last part, we talked about the poem The Solitary Reaper. In that part, we discussed the first 4 stanzas of that poem. We talked about the poet and the background of that poem, and we said or we found that the poet is talking about a highland girl, a reaper girl who was singing in a melodious voice, and the valley where she was singing and she was working, that whole valley was filled with her song, and he asked the passers by to listen to her song, to look at her, to enjoy her song. And then in the next 2 stanzas, that is in stanza 3 and 4, he compares the reaper girl's song with that of the 2 best singers of nature, the nightingale and the cuckoo, and he finds that these 2 singers of nature, they are deficient, because their song cannot be compared to the song of the solitary reaper. The solitary reaper's song is much more melodious, much more thrilling than the song of these 2 best songbirds. Now, today let us talk about the other 4 stanzas in this poem. Let us discuss stanza 5 and 6 first. Let us see it on your screen. Let me read that to you again. Will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow for old, unhappy, far off things and battles long ago. Or is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss or pain that has been and may be again? So, there are certain words which are difficult for you. The glossary is given. Plaintive numbers. Plaintive numbers means sad song. Plaintive is sad, numbers is song or music. So, plaintive numbers is sad song. Previously, the poet talked about the same sad song using the word melancholy strain. Here, the poet uses the word plaintive numbers. Then, humble lay. Humble lay means a song about ordinary events or an ordinary song, we can say. Now, let us understand these 2 stanzas. Will no one tell me what she sings? The very first line of this stanza, the poet asks a question. He tells, is there anyone who can tell me what this girl is singing? It means the poet does not understand the meaning of the solitary reaper song. Although he enjoys the song, although he enjoys her voice, yet he does not understand the theme of the song, what the girl is singing. Why? Perhaps the poet does not know the language used by this solitary reaper. Actually, in the mountainous regions of Scotland, the people, they use a dialect which is called a Gaelic Scottish dialect. This dialect means upabhasa. This particular dialect is not understood by common English speakers. So, the poet, being a common speaker of English, he does not understand the dialect in which this girl is singing. Therefore, the poet asks people, is there anyone who could tell me what she sings? But there is actually no one to tell him what the girl is singing. So, the poet tries to guess the theme of the girl's song. Therefore, he says, perhaps the plaintive numbers flow, this sad song is flowing. We know that water flows in river, but here the song is flowing, it is coming out of the girl's mouth, the reaper girl's mouth in such a smooth way. The poet says it is flowing like water from the river. That sad song is flowing from the mouth of the solitary reaper. And what is she singing? What is the theme of her song? See, he says, perhaps it is about some for old, unhappy, far off things and battles long ago. Perhaps it is about some old thing which was unhappy, which happened long ago, or perhaps this was about some battle which was fought long time ago. This is one of his guess. Then he makes another guess. He says, oh, is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today? Then he says, the poet says, perhaps this song is not about some far off things or battles, but perhaps it is about some ordinary things, ordinary events, like some familiar matter of today or day to day life. Perhaps this song is, the theme of this song is some ordinary events that is happening around nowadays every day. So, it is familiar, and some natural sorrow, loss or pain. We know that sorrow, suffering, loss, pain, they are a part and parcel of our life, they are natural human life, they experience sorrow, suffering, loss and pain. Therefore, the poet says that has been and may be again, means sorrow, suffering, loss and pain, it happened in past, it will happen, it may happen in future. So, they are part and parcel of human life. The poet says perhaps the girl is talking about these ordinary things like sorrows and suffering, loss and pain of human life. So, here in these two stanzas, the poet is trying to make guess about the theme of the solitary reaper's song, and he tries to guess because he does not know the language, he does not understand the language used by the solitary reaper. Now, let us go to the next stanza and understand its meaning. You see, whatever the theme the maiden sang, as if her song could have no ending, I saw her singing at her work and over the sickle bending. You can see a picture there, there is the girl who is cutting the crop with the help of a sickle, and she is bending over the sickle. So, you can understand the last line with the help of that picture. Now, the poet in the previous two stanzas tried to guess about the theme of the poem, but since there was no one to tell him about the theme, to clarify his doubts, although he made guesses, yet he could not clarify. Then the poet says, oh, I do not care about that, whatever might be the theme, I do not care, but I care about the melodious voice of the solitary reaper. Therefore, the poet says, the maiden sang as if her song could have no ending, as if there is no end to her song, as if the song is permanent, eternal, everlasting. So, in this line the poet says that the reaper girl's song is eternal, everlasting. This quality of music, her melodious voice has no ending. It seemed to the poet as if the girl won't stop singing, as if the girl would continue singing without any end. And what else was the girl doing? The poet, when the poet saw her, she was singing at her work over the sickle bending. She was working, cutting crops, gathering crops by bending over her sickles. So, in these three stanzas, what we understood is that the poet tries to guess about the theme of the reaper girl's song, and the poet then says, I do not care about the theme of the song, since I do not understand her language, yet I care about her song. Therefore, he says, whatever the theme, the maiden sang, the way the maiden sang, it had no ending. Now, let us go to the next stanza and understand the meaning. The last stanza, the 8th stanza. I read it again for you. I listened motionless and still, and as I mounted up the hill, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. In the previous stanza, we read how the poet tells that although he does not understand the theme of the reaper girl's song, yet he finds that the reaper girl's song has no ending, it is unending. Then here again the poet says, I listened. All the time from the beginning of the poem he has been listening, and at the end he also says, I listened to the solitary reaper's song. In what condition? Motionless and still. The poet was stand still, motionless, he was not moving at all. Why? Because the poet was mesmerized, hypnotized, spellbound by the reaper girl's song. कवि एमिति अभिभूत हो जाइछन्ति, आत्मविभोर हो जाइछन्ति, he forgot to move. Therefore, he listened to the solitary reaper's song without any movement. So, in a standstill position, he enjoyed the solitary reaper's song. But after some time, since he was going somewhere, he had to go. Therefore, he says, and as I mounted up the hill, as he climbed up the hill, he went away. The music in my heart I bore. Bore means carried. It is the past form of bear. Bear, you know, B-E-A-R means carry. So, past form of bear is bore. So, bore means carried. So, he carried the music in his heart. As I told you in the last part, that when you hear a good music, a good song, it is carried by your heart, it is carried by your mind, it is replayed in your mind and heart. Similarly, here the poet, he left the place, he went away, he climbed up the mountains and went away, but he carried the music of that solitary reaper's song in his heart long after it was heard no more. Although he left that place long time ago, yet long after that, when he is not listening to the reaper girl's song, yet the reaper girl's song was carried in his heart, it was played in his heart again and again. So, here using the last two stanzas, that is stanza 7 and stanza 8, what the poet basically says is that the reaper girl's song is permanent, it is eternal, it has an eternal effect, unending effect. You cannot compare with it with anything else, and it has no ending. So, any music, any beautiful thing, they have a eternal quality, they have a permanent impression on our mind. Now, in these two parts, we read the whole poem of the solitary reaper from stanza 1 to stanza 8. All the 34 lines we read that. Let us recapitulate what we read in these 8 stanzas. You can see in the first two stanzas, that is stanza 1 and 2, the poet is mesmerized by a lonely highland reaper girl's song which filled the whole valley. I again and again told you about the theme of that stanza 1 and 2. Then he finds a voice more melodious and thrilling than two best singers of nature, that is the nightingale and the cuckoo. Then in the 5th and 6th stanzas, he tries to guess about the theme of the reaper girl's song. And now in the last two stanzas, as we read just a moment before now, the poet feels that the eternal quality of the reaper girl's song, as he carries the music in his heart long after he left the place. So, this is what we read in these 8 stanzas of the poem The Solitary Reaper. Now, let us discuss some questions related to this particular poem. Before we discuss anything about poem, about these questions belonging to this particular poem, let me tell you that in our examination, poetry section, from poetry section we have only short questions coming in our examination. We have either questions where we have to answer in a single sentence or in a word or a phrase, and there are fill in the blanks type of questions, and there are true false type of questions, and there are match the column type of questions, and in some questions there are multiple choices given and you have to choose the proper choice or proper answer. So, we have taken questions keeping in mind this type of questions. We have taken some questions, let us discuss them. Questions and answers related to stanzas 1 and 2. What is the girl doing in the first stanza? The answer is, the girl is reaping and singing by herself. The next question, what does the poet tell the passers-by to do? Answer is, the poet advises the passers-by to behold or look at the lonely reaper. Let us go to the next slide and take some more questions. Whom does the poet say, stop here or gently pass? Answer is, to the passers-by. Why does the poet say so? The answer is, the poet says so in order to not disturb the reaper. We discussed these things when we read that poem. Then, what is the girl doing in the second stanza? The answer is, the girl is cutting and binding the grain and singing a sad song. We can also say the girl is reaping and singing a sad song. Let us take some more questions. What does the poet advise the passers-by to do here? The poet advises the passers-by to listen to the girl. Therefore, he says, "Oh, listen." The next question, dash is overflowing with the sound. Undoubtedly, the answer is the deep valley. You can also write the vale profound. The next question, the last question from these two stanzas we have taken, which word or phrase is used to say that the girl is singing a sad song? In these two stanzas, the poet uses a phrase melancholy strain to tell that the girl is singing a sad song. So, the answer is melancholy strain. So, these are the questions we discussed from stanzas 1 and 2. Let us discuss questions from stanzas 3 and 4. You see, question is, the poet talks about a bird in the third stanza. What is that bird? The answer undoubtedly nightingale. Next question, what is the condition of the bands of travellers? The travellers are weary or tired. You can also write exhausted. So, there are weary bands of travellers, the poet writes. So, the travellers are, their condition is weary or tired. Next question, here shady hunt means, in that stanza 3, shady hunt means an oasis. The answer is an oasis. If the question is in, write the answer in a word or phrase, you can write an oasis. Otherwise, if it is a question where you have to write the answer in a sentence, you have to write here shady hunt means an oasis. Let us go to the next slide and discuss some more questions pertaining to these two stanzas. Where are the tired travellers? The answer is, the tired travellers are in some oasis in the Arabian desert. The poet talks about Arabian desert, we know. So, the tired travellers are in some oasis in the Arabian desert. Next question is, what welcomes the tired travellers? The melodious song of the nightingale, the welcome notes of the nightingale, you can also say. So, this welcomes the tired travellers. The next question, the poet talks about which bird in the fourth stanza? The answer is cuckoo. In the third stanza, he talks about nightingale. In the fourth stanza, he talks about cuckoo. Next question is, the cuckoo sings in dash season. If you recall that stanza, you can recall that in springtime from cuckoo bird. So, the cuckoo sings in spring season. The answer is spring. Let us take another slide and discuss some more questions related to this stanza. Dash breaks the silence of the siege. The answer is the cuckoo's song. Next question, what are the Hebrides? The Hebrides are a group of islands to the northwest of Scotland. I showed you the picture when I taught you that. I showed you the map of England and Scotland, and I showed you where the Hebrides are. They are a group of islands to the northwest of Scotland. The next question, whose voice is more thrilling, the cuckoo's voice or the reaper's voice? Undoubtedly, the poet says that the reaper's voice is more thrilling. So, the answer would be the reaper's voice. So, these are the questions we discussed related to stanzas 3 and 4. Let us go to the next slide and discuss some more questions related to stanzas 5 and 6. In the fifth stanza, which phrase is used to refer to sad song? Well, in this fifth stanza, the poet uses the phrase plaintive numbers to refer to sad song. In the second stanza, the poet tells it is a melancholy strain, but in the fifth stanza, when he refers to sad song, he uses the phrase plaintive numbers. You should be careful about that. For the second stanza, it is melancholy strain. For the fifth stanza, it is plaintive numbers. Next question is, the poet doesn't understand the reaper's song. Why? As we discussed earlier, because the poet doesn't know the language in which the reaper sings. The reaper was singing in a dialect, therefore, the poet did not understand the language as he did not know the language. The next question, is there anyone to answer the poet's question? Well, the poet asks the questions, will no one tell me? That means there is no one to answer his question. So, the answer is an emphatic no. Let us discuss some more questions about this 5th and 6th stanza. In the 5th stanza, what does the poet guess about the theme of the reaper's song? The poet guesses that the theme of the reaper's song might be about old, unhappy, far off things and about battles that were fought long ago. So, this is the guess that the poet makes in the 5th stanza. Remember, in the 5th and 6th stanzas, the poet tries to guess about the theme of the reaper's song, because he doesn't understand what the reaper is singing. But in the 5th stanza, he guesses that perhaps the theme of the reaper's song is about some old, unhappy, far off things and about battles that were fought long ago. What is meant by humble lay? Humble lay means a song about ordinary events. I discussed that while discussing the glossary related to that stanza. The next question is, what does the poet guess about the theme of the reaper's song in the 6th stanza? You see, in the 5th stanza he guesses something related to the theme, in the 6th stanza he guesses something else. So, in the 6th stanza the poet guesses the theme to be about some familiar matter like natural sorrow, loss or pain. So, the guess of 5th stanza and the 6th stanza, they are totally different. Let us discuss some questions related to stanzas 7 and 8. How did the song affect the poet? The answer is, the song left a permanent mark on his heart. Therefore, the poet says, the music in my heart I bore long after I heard it no more. It was heard no more. So, it left a permanent mark on his heart. Then the next question, the poet listened motionless and still because the reaper's melodious voice mesmerized him. The answer would be that the poet listened motionless and still because the reaper's melodious voice mesmerized him. He was hypnotized, he was spellbound by the melodious voice of the reaper girl. Then the next question, our last question that we took from this particular topic, what is meant by long after it was heard no more? It means music is eternal and can give pleasure even when one does not hear it. Means music has a eternal quality, it has a permanent quality which gives pleasure for all time to come even when you do not hear it. So, here are certain questions that I took from this topic, some possible questions. There can be many more questions related to this particular topic. There are 8 stanzas, there can be many more questions and different types of questions. In this particular episode, in this particular part, we discussed certain questions, but when you refer to test papers or the reference books, you can, and your textbook also, you will find many more questions related to this topic. Go through them properly, try to answer those questions, and if you try to answer them, go through them, try to understand the question, try to find out the answer from your textbook, and if you listen to this, whatever we talked about, if you watch this particular episode and if you remember how we studied, we learnt this poem, how I explained different parts of this poem, all the 8 stanzas. I think you will be able to answer the questions related to this particular poem, no matter whatever questions comes in the examination. If you practice a lot and remember how I explained this poem, I think you will be able to answer all the questions related to this topic. Therefore, I say again, go through this episode, remember what I taught you in these 2 parts and make practice. The more practice you will do, the more questions you will see from reference books, from test papers, from your textbook, and also questions that I discussed here, the more you will be expert in answering those questions, and I hope you will never find any problem in answering those questions. So, this is what we learnt in today's episode, that is one of the best poems of one of the best poets. The poet is William Wordsworth, and his one of the best poem is The Solitary Reaper. Thank you.